Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and this evening we'll have a look at the latest from the GFS, the GM, the ECMWF, the GFS Ensembles, and we'll finish up having a look at UKMO Run as well. Now we've had a reasonably dry day for many, however we have seen this cold front sweeping through sort of northern England down into central England throughout this afternoon and evening, and it's brought some sort of rain in and along that front. We've seen a bit of drizzle, some heavier bursts, but generally nothing too significant. In the longer term, though, it does look like this high pressure we have around at the moment is going to be shifting around, and it does look like we're going to be going quite cold and unsettled for the last third of October. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And do remember to follow on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. So we do run through the latest GFS. You can see at the moment we have that big high pressure over the top of the UK, a bit of a cold front sinking southwards. And that high pressure is going to slowly start to topple away over the next few days. We're going to see some cooler polar maritime air mass move in, especially over Scotland and northern England. Could provide maybe some overnight frost, feeling pretty chilly, even for many areas where we don't see the very cold air getting down. It's going to be chillier, so it's going to be a couple of degrees colder. Beyond that, westerly winds come back in, and we do see some warmer, sort of mid-Atlantic air. However, it's accompanied by big low-pressure systems sitting out in the Atlantic and close to Iceland, and it's going to be bringing in lots of wet and windy weather, especially further northwards and westwards. You can see there's a bit of blocking going up towards Greenland, which we've seen quite a lot over the last few days. And what this is going to do, it's going to force the low pressure through the country, and we're going to just be generally under sort of cooler northwesterly winds. Once that does clear, and you can see we're going to have sort of alternating warmer and colder sectors. Those chillier sectors are going to be polar maritime air, and you can see across Scotland we could be going for quite a chilly sort of prolonged period. Not very cold and not cold enough really to produce any widespread snow, but over the hills and the mountains I wouldn't be surprised to be snow at times, especially overnight. See overnight frosts around, and further southwards temperatures are going to be a good couple of degrees below where they have been recently, potentially only into the low teens, and being pretty chilly at night. So it doesn't look particularly great. Typical sort of autumnal weather coming, maybe even colder than average sort of autumnal weather coming for the end of October. And it does look like at this stage it's going to be unsettled and cold for Halloween. But again, that is sort of a good few weeks away, almost 3 weeks away. So can't really put out a specific forecast at this stage, but the signal is there for it to be more unsettled. It still can change, of course, as there really is sort of no definitive patterns after really day 10 that you can really rely on. So this stage, it does look a little bit unsettled, but it can still change quite drastically. If we do have a look at the GM, see how that is compared to the GFS up to day 10, you can see again high pressure slowly toppling away, pulling in that colder polar maritime air in from the north, moving through quite a lot through the country, especially down the east and side. And then we do start to put in some quite warm air from the south, but it is accompanied by a lot of cloud, heavy rain, and strong winds. Eventually that low does clear through, and you can see really quite chilly polar maritime air sort of move in, and that could be a theme we do see, and that could produce snow over Scotland, quite unsettled conditions. And it's all because we've got these ridges of high pressure out in the Atlantic trying to push northwards, and what it does is it sort of gives this northwest-southeast alignment of the jet stream. You can see the general isobar pattern is coming in from Greenland, pulling in that colder air. And if we are in the depths of winter, it could even be providing more heavy snowfall quite widely. But considering it's late October, it's just going to be a little bit chilly and maybe a bit of snow over northern hills and mountains. But yeah, very similar to the GFS in terms of having this jet shift southwards and be more amplified with that colder northwesterly wind moving in. Now, if we have a look at what the ECMWF does show, you can see at the moment we've got high pressure around, that's going to topple away. We're going to be seeing this northerly wind move through, so with some quite chilly air. And then we see that warmer air move up with that low pressure system. But once that low pressure starts to clear, we do go into a direct northerly. Wow, very cold. That would turn if we did run that on a day, because the cold air still is just sort of sitting to our north. But as that moves through and this low slowly clears out to our east, we'd be going really quite chilly there. So it does look like there's going to be, at some point over the next few weeks, a real polar maritime sort of blast, whether it is from a northwesterly wind or a northerly. Just with how the jet is setting up with the amplification, it's inevitable at some point we're going to see it align, so that this really cold air that's sitting over the Arctic does sink southwards. Now, it's not going to be sort of freezer-like conditions. It's just going to be quite chilly, especially maybe in the south. Temperatures will be up maybe 8, 9, 10 degrees and overnight around freezing, or maybe 1 or 2 degrees. For not Scotland, maybe 4 or 5 degrees, maybe seeing some snow overnight. That's what we're talking about. Nothing amazingly cold, nothing that that would be really out of the ordinary in sort of January or February, but for the end of October, coming off the back of summer, it would feel really quite cold if we did see this come off. So now if we have a look at the GFS Ensembles, you can see that sort of pattern well reflected. We see colder at the moment, now we can see a bit of warmer air come in, and then we see that cold front move in by the end of the week. Then it slowly goes warmer with precipitation signals picking up as that low pushes in off the Atlantic, bringing up that warmer southerly winds, but accompanied a lot of cloud and rain. Then we see the big drop off as that colder west to northwesterly wind moves in, and you can see there is a lot of uncertainty. Some going warmer, some going colder, and generally it's all down to the exact positioning of these lows and the high pressure trying to ridge up from the Atlantic as to whether we do see flat westerlies, which are more likely to be a little bit milder, so some of these warmer ensemble member runs, or ones going much colder with direct north or northwesterly winds. At this stage, it's sort of a 50-50 split. You can see the mean of all the ensemble members is coming around average. So it's not set in stone. We're going to see a guaranteed northerly wind and the cold polar maritime air, but I'm pretty confident that at some point over the next few weeks we will start to see something very, very chilly. But generally, it is still very unsettled, regardless of what sort of air mass we do have. It starts to look very unsettled. And if we do have a look at the sea level pressure, you can see generally high pressure at the moment, but slowly dropping around 20th, 21st, so in about a week's time, to quite vigorous low pressure. And then it slowly rises as that sort of central low does move away. But still a lot of disparity within the model. Some going for quite high pressure, some going for quite low pressure. Again, uncertainty, and all depends on where the ridges do set up. If we do have a look at Glasgow to give us an idea of sort of conditions on the northwards, see again, very similar to London, a little bit shifted southwards, especially with the low pressure, because, of course, closer to the centre of the lows, which is sitting over Iceland. And you can see generally very similar pattern. High pressure at the moment, slowly dropping down, down to 19th, 20th, 21st, with quite low pressure, and then slowly rising once again, but not being really anything too decent. If we have a look at the 850 HPA temperature and precipitation, again, similar to London, a rise at the moment, then cold fronts moving through, much colder than we're going to be seeing in London, simply because that air mass doesn't quite reach the south. So pretty chilly conditions there, and we'll have a look at the UKMO Operational Run in a minute to see what temperatures we could be seeing with that. Then a rise as we see that southerly wind move in, and then a big drop of around 5 to 10 degrees at 850 HPA, down to around a couple of degrees below freezing. And that is that sort of colder polar maritime air moving in. More likely to reach Scotland, of course, closer to the north, and sweep through. Still a lot of uncertainty within the exact temperatures, of course, but it is looking quite likely we do see polar maritime air mass move in. Very unsettled regardless, and that is expected with this sort of pattern of jet stream shifted a bit further southwards and amplified. With low pressure in and around the UK. So this drier spell we've seen over the last few days is going to be coming to an end with a lot of low pressure. It does look like it's going to be returning for the last 3rd of October. So we do finally have a look at the UKMO Operational Run, if we do run through this quickly. You can see at the moment a bit of rain across central England, simply because of that cold front moving through. And then we see some more rain move into Scotland, a lot of drizzly rain off westerly wind, even though we're generally under high pressure, still some moist air coming in off the Atlantic. And then weather fronts start to push through with that northerly wind. Does reach southern areas through northern England, Midlands, southern England, but does fizzle away. Beyond that, things do look very wet in from the west by this weekend, sort of Saturday evening. Could be turning very wet overnight. Does slowly fizzle away coming up against the high pressure, but generally after that it will be turning a lot more unsettled next week. If we do have a look at the max temperatures, you can see today temperatures really peaked at around sort of 14, 15 degrees, so nothing too warm, but we did see sunshine, maybe 16 or 17 degrees. If we do have a look through tomorrow, you can see by the afternoon, maybe decent once again, 15, 16, 17 degrees potentially across England and Wales, but for northern England, Scotland, low teens, maybe even single digits. By Thursday, we can see the cold air starting to push in from the north, maybe only 6, 7 degrees across northern Scotland, 16, 17 degrees across southern England, and that cold front does start to sweep through, and you can see early hours of Friday, just above freezing across Scotland, whereas 10, 12 degrees in England. And by Friday afternoon, really struggling across northern England and Scotland. Single digits quite widely across England and Wales, and maybe 12, 13 degrees. Across the far south of Ireland, southwest, could still reach 16, 17 as that cold air hasn't quite reached it. But it is turning pretty chilly overnight to Saturday, widely low to mid single digits, especially across northern areas and eastern areas. Across Scotland, quite a widespread frost, potentially across central areas. And Saturday is going to be a pretty chilly day across the north, 4, 5, 6 degrees. Across the east, 12, 13, 14. But where we do hang on to some warmer air in the west, 16, 17 degrees, and right towards the end of the run by Sunday. As we pull up that warmer air from the south ahead of those low pressure systems, could be quite a warm day in the south, but probably will be accompanied by some rain and more showers, wind and cloud, but still reaching 16, 17, 18 degrees. So it is looking like it's going to be turning very unsettled in the coming weeks. For sort of the last third of October, so do go and enjoy any dry weather we do see over the coming days. It does look like it's going to be turning chilly, especially in the north, which is expected this time of year, but even in the south we could see some colder days and colder nights at times, and we're all going to keep an eye on what happens with the amplification of the jet stream as to whether we do see a colder polar maritime air mass sweep through the whole country, because if it did, then we could start to see some much colder conditions, getting into sort of mid to high single digit highs of the day, and potentially getting down to freezing, and we could start to be seeing the potential for the first sort of full frost of the season for most areas. But it is in the longer term and is still subject to change. We'll just have to keep an eye on the models. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.